let's get our final speaker up here. Everybody's been chomping a bit to hear from our FVL CFT leader, Wally Rugen, and his vision and all the bruises and fights he has from pushing this noodle. We can't have a better leader to be doing that. And Wally, I appreciate you being here and look forward to your comments.
All right. Similar to the great Tim Crosby, this will be my last speech as the CFT director. So lots of transitions going on. Let's go to the next chart. But no, thanks to Quad A, our great aviation enterprise instantiated in the six-pack, and certainly a lot of our other great PEOs. You know, we always hone in on PEO Aviation, which does the lion's share of the work, but PEO C3T is here in General Potts. We work very strongly with PEO IEWS, C5ISR for another center besides the great AVMIC and Jeff Langout, PEO Soldier, and again, it shows a great team across a much wider enterprise to deliver capability to our future force. I wanted to review, first of all, the FVL tenets that we started with a bit over 5 years ago when we stood up Futures Command and stood up Future Vertical Lift CFT. But it was really this notion of reach, transformational speed and range as we looked at our pacing theaters and our pacing threats. Again, a lot of this study and work came out of the first Donbass and the Crimean conflict in 2014, and we studied it very, very intently to ensure that we weren't going to be setting our assembly areas and our forward arming and refueling points where, at that point in time, Russian surface-to-surface fires could severely degrade our performance. So this notion of reach generates standoff. Obviously, vertical lift generates this notion of detaching from a ship port or an airfield that are highly targetable, and then obviously future vertical lift and our great ability to train down to the lowest echelon allows us to disaggregate so we don't provide the enemy with a prime target. Also, this notion of standoff and lethality. And again, the 8-click Hellfire was tremendous for my generation, but the next generation is going to need more. And we've worked very hard on that over the last 5 years. Certainly survivability, both on board and off board. We're working very diligently on that and getting a layered approach and combining that with standoff and advanced tactics to come at it in a way that we train routinely now, but then taking that to the next level again for the future force. And then lastly, this notion of affordability. We want to be able to not only be effective against our pacing threats and our high payoff threats, but we need to scale it because we are the Army, and that's where affordability comes in. And so importantly, this is where the alignment, again, with my powerful partner and ally, Jeff Langout in AVMIC, has just proven over really the last decade to deliver science and technology, deliver capabilities that we can then transition to my other tremendous partner in Rob Berry at the PEO to operationalize it. And you'll see that theme pop up. So here's FARA. What I do want to remind the body of is we kicked off GMRTD in 2013. In 2021, the fiscal year enacted budget instantiated a 4-year acceleration on FLRAA. But if you do the math, that's 8 years. 8 years of work in a tech demonstration phase that was powerful for us. And then we see the down select in 2023. For FARA, we are moving out on competitive prototypes that you see pictured here, and we're only 3.5 years from conceptualizing that and we're 3 design iterations in. And so I would posit that we are moving much faster with a much higher level of training across industry, academia, and government. And although we've seen an 8 to 9 month slip due to the engine, I would still say that this program is very healthy. It's moving out in a very robust fashion. And with the 95% complete on the prototype builds, and having specifically and consciously tied a developmental engine to a developmental aircraft as a strategic win for the Army and Army Aviation, I'm very, very proud of the process we've gone through, very, very proud of the accomplishments to date. We have much more to do. We're not going to rest on that, but it is important to note that we are moving out in a much more aggressive fashion. I think when you look at the improved turbine engine program, we have 3 engines assembled. We have 1 or 2 beginning testing, and that's the altitude engine from sea level to altitude, and then the FARA number 1 engine. So again, we're watching it very intently. Obviously, I sit back and watch General Barry and his team do their thing, but the requirements guys are in every meeting when it comes to ITEP and FARA, and we're watching it very, very closely. When you look at the modular effects launcher that is pictured in the bottom left, again, we continue to see in our 7 trips out to our western test ranges just the flexibility this technology is bringing, our ability to put pretty much every lethal and non-lethal effect that we can think up on the MEL, have it fight it, and then again, having that software be able to port it into the cockpit so our crews can fight it, and the hard points that drive these effects to fit on our aircraft. Highly tailorable for future commanders, and again, that MET-TC is going to be alive and well in the next decade as they want to get after what we saw out west this last time was a cooperative engagement between our ability to sense on the same platform, so find and fix, and then also finish in one platform. And you know what? No offense to my good friend Tony Potts, but you don't need a network for that. You can have a trained crew at the tactical edge doing really good work. On that MEL, we've seen the SOA community or SOCOM embrace that MEL, and we've also seen the Marine Corps embrace that MEL technology as well. And again, that's another version of open system approach, and again, those concepts are really transformational in our developmental efforts. And then again, I want to say that with FARA, we didn't rest on our laurels with the COVID impacts, the supply chain impacts, and kind of the brain drain impacts that the pandemic presented us. General Barry and his team have been working that draft weapon system PDR and really clawing and scope to the left in the weapon system development. And again, we're watching that very, very acutely, but we didn't just wait and do things sequentially, doing a lot of things in parallel. The last on the 20 millimeter, again, very proud of the Armament Center up in Jersey. These guys have delivered us a TRL-6 20 millimeter that's 2/3 the weight of the current 20 millimeter, 1,500 rounds per minute, which is more than double the Apache 30 millimeter. So very happy with that transformational 20 millimeter, linkless, lighter, pretty awesome. Next chart. So I did mention, FLRAA, the 4-year acceleration that was instantiated in the fiscal 21 enacted budget. With the down select, we're head down with our great Fort Novacell team. They're the lead agents for the Dotlin PFP analysis. So we're supporting General McCurry and obviously the CDID team on firing on all those studies and analysis that we need to get after to make this a very successful transition in the coming years. Again, reminder of what GMRTD did for us. Again, what you saw was industry come forward with skin in the game to the tune of approximately $1.6 billion and have a very vibrant competition, which is going to get the Army and Army Aviation a very transformational air vehicle. Strong support from Army Contracting Command is I saw them work on this. Kudos go out to those fine professionals that worked a very tough contracting issue and did it in a stellar fashion. We've had over 100 touch points, soldier touch points with this effort and with this air vehicle across every compo. And it informs, obviously, our CDD as well. And I don't talk enough about the soldier touch points and the feedback we're getting from all specialties, all MOSs that make up our fighting force. They've all been part of this. It hasn't just been the pilots. Matter of fact, I would argue it's been more on the maintenance, maintainer, and FARP side. And then I would say, too, that very focused, now that we have a down select and a form factor, on what that medevac cabin is going to look like. The medevac, our medevac fleet is north of 500 aircraft. And those 500 aircraft have to have the best, most transformational cabin that our providers need to take care of our wounded. It is what General McCurry has called the sacred trust, and we're going to ensure that we maintain that sacred trust. The current work that goes on out at the Army Guard in Oregon, Massachusetts, and Florida on the 60 HH-60 cabin, that will inform the prototype that General Barry is kicking off this year. And again, we'll bring all the soldiers in and all our providers in to really give us a rigorous look on our medevac cabin. Next chart. When we talk Future Tactical UAS, obviously this is the longest soldier touch point that Army Futures Command has ever done. We got an increment 0 in the field. We have an increment 1 that'll push through this year, and then obviously increment 2 is the major effort. It's within competition now. I think it's a great news story on getting what industry has done so well in giving us a transformational capability and then pushing that very quickly and rapidly into the Army. I want to avoid any competition or contract sensitive discussion, so I'll leave it there. But yet again, what the folks that are competing are going to deliver to our formations is an air vehicle that is runway independent, is far less noisy, so it will not burn the target, and it fits at least in a Chinook or better, so we can transport it organically. What we're also seeing is this notion of mission command on the move, which industry brought to us. We know that these data links are highly targetable, so having our soldiers be able to move and be agile on the battlefield will increase survivability. And again, what we're seeing is our ability to control these are getting smaller and smaller, so we can get them into forward tacks and talks so commanders can see first and strike first. So really a lot of great innovation in FTUAS, and very happy to see it moving as fast as it is. Next slide. So our launch defects and our long-range precision munition. I'm going to start with Spike for a minute. We do have a directed requirement out there for the Spike missile. Happy to report out in January that the Apache Echo Model V6, 2 very successful shots out at Yuma Proving Ground in January. Next year, 1-3 Attack Battalion, 1st of the 229th Attack Battalion, and 217 Cav will all be fielded simultaneously on their Apache V6, Echo Model V6 aircraft. We'll go from IOC in 3rd quarter to FOC in 4th quarter. Should be done about next July on this effort. Think about the transformational effects of this as we take what typically used to be an 8-kilometer lethal reach up to 32 kilometers by next year, get it into our pacing theaters, so we'll have it both in Indo-PACOM and EUCOM, and then with our immediate response force simultaneously, again, providing options for commanders as we look at this penetration phase of MDO and needing these kind of weapon systems to get after generating freedom of maneuver and then exploiting that freedom of maneuver, which is very unique to Army aviation. As we looked at our launched effect campaign of learning, we also last October at Dugway did about a 6-week shoot-off with PEO missiles in space, running it in an effort to inform our framing analysis for the LRPM program. That will flow out of the directed requirement, and again, very happy and pleased with what the performers and OEMs did out at Dugway, and that framing analysis is it's making its way up the chain right now, which I'm very pleased to report out. When we look at launched effects, you're probably seeing a name change. We're no longer, pigeonhole it into air-launched effects. What we've seen is wide adoption across multi-domains. So we're seeing it obviously from the ground, but also the maritime environments. And what I'm very proud of is they're using the kit that, again, TDDA up at Eustis and Jeff Langout's team developed a few years ago. And we're seeing, again, wide adoption of that and multi-service adoption of that. So proud to report that out. So no longer air-launched effects, but launched effects. And can't wait to see how those capabilities get hung on robots and crewed combat vehicles across our department. Next slide. Obviously, we are working very diligently across a number of other efforts that aren't always what we do, but we are supporting, and that starts with electronic warfare. We're not writing any electronic warfare requirements, but we're building air vehicles that can host them in a MOSA manner. And again, I spoke to the collaborative engagement that was done at the last Project Convergence, where, again, you can kind of bypass this need for a network if a crew has a mission and they're on the tactical edge, they can see it and they can strike it. Scalable control interface, again, I continue to see the S&T transition appropriately and agilely into PEO aviation to get after this gamification of our control of air vehicles, which is how I view it. It's an ability of an Xbox controller, a tablet, to be able to allow leaders at the tactical edge with very limited training the ability to control our air vehicles. And again, at the tactical edge, we have to be faster. Our soldiers have to be able to see it and strike it, because we have an enemy that fires indiscriminately on detect, and we fire on identify. And we have to pull that longer chain. We have to be faster with a longer chain than our enemies are with their indiscriminate firing. That is our culture, and that is what we value most. Degraded visual environment, we'll see a directed requirement into 1 battalion of the 101st, an assault battalion next year in 2024. Again, what we're looking is heads up, eyes out, keep our crew's heads in the game, and happy to see that directed requirement moving along as well. This last edge that we're actually out there now, but we're still working our high endurance aerial TR network relay, basically retransing. We're working heavily with the network CFT and with the help of C5ISR and PEO C3T. We'll be generating or supporting the generation of a requirement document on that aerial tier network by the end of the calendar year, and AROCing that with Army senior leaders. Next chart. So I would say that as an enterprise, we're really into analytical rigor. And I think this is birthed out of, I don't want to be unfair, but maybe some of the Comanche failure, where we really wanted to understand what's going to be effective, again, against our pacing threats, in our pacing theaters, what's going to be effective against our high payoff threats, what's going to be affordable, and what's going to be something that is achievable in the timelines we need. And so what you see really there is 35 studies in the last 2 years across those topics. You know, that's informed our 8 AROC approved requirement documents. We've been into the AROC, I think, about 23 times, which I would tell you as a staff is a lot of good, hard government work. And that's a shout out to those majors, lieutenant colonels, and colonels that do all the heavy lifting there across the enterprise, but predominantly in the CFT. We have 7 more documents programmed over the next 2 years. And again, this analytical rigor, what I've found on this is embracing this early and often. It really justifies to Army senior leaders the decisions they can make, and they can make them in a much more confident manner with the data that's there. We also, if you haven't noticed, we have a few naysayers every now and then. And a lot of times our critics, which are important, we need the rigor from our critics to keep us on track. But a lot of times they just have words and they don't have data. And we need to keep this sense of the need for data and the need to constantly see ourselves, and that's why I bring up the studies. We've also had 7 major experimentation and demonstration events out at our western test ranges, so that's a little over 1 a year. I would tell you that we've also done NetModX with our network CFT, which it's not counted here, and we've been out to a host of assured position navigation and timing exercises as well. So 7 is just major exercises and experimentations, but we've been out to far more. What we're seeing with Edge this year is, again, not going out alone. We're up to, I think I misquoted myself yesterday, but we keep getting demand, so I think we're up to 11 countries now, and that's late breaking with RFIs to our Chief of Staff, and then good direction from our Chief to bring them in. 11 countries, highly joint, and out at this Edge event now will be from Fort Wainwright through JBLM down to Yuma, so really generating those Indo-PACOM level distances and battlefield geometry. We've had hundreds of soldier touch points across all compos, as I mentioned. Obviously, rapid acquisition and rapid prototyping that we've watched intently as we've generated these requirement documents that the PEOs have done. Major S&T investments that have produced real fruit and real transitions, and over 20 prototyping efforts. And again, it takes a team, and very proud of the team. I think the last thing I'll mention is this notion of high fidelity modeling. Our models have gotten better and better and better. And what we've seen with the model that we started with about 4 years ago is an adoption across all services of that model as the gold standard. And so that high fidelity physics-based model in our pacing theaters has really allowed us to tune across, again, what's effective, what's affordable, and what's achievable. Next chart. And so last, I'll give you a good eye chart that any good requirements guy does, which here's the nesting of Army Aviation requirement documents that are right now in play in the staffing process. We don't own all of them. Certainly the ISR EW sensor efforts belong to others, but we'll be the truck that gets them there in the lower tier of the air domain. Certainly the FVL CFT doesn't own Hades, but we work intently arm in arm with ISR Task Force and with the G2 to support that And so proud of what I've seen come out of Artemis, Ares, and Athena efforts. Very, very interesting to watch, and so happy for that cohort of Army Aviation. And then you see the efforts we have there. The one foot stop I'll have is MOSA. MOSA encircles the entire show there, all our requirements. We're serious as a heart attack about MOSA. There's a 1,000-member ACWIG that's ongoing, that's run by the PEO, and the requirements guys are in there with that robust body. And again, proud to see the robust body that has academia, our material developers on the government side, and industry. I do want to review that as part of JMRTD, we did 4 capstone events with mission system architecture design, and industry was a part of all those capstone events. We finished our last capstone, similar to our finishing of the air vehicle, in March of 2020. And that S&T activity, MSAD, transitioned to MOSA via a requirements document that we wrote, and then obviously General Berry instantiated that requirement document in all of the air vehicle tech specs. We've seen the Navy and the Marine Corps adapt our FAF, our FVL architecture framework. That FAF is the reference architecture that you're going to see, again, multi-service adoption. So get on board because it's happening. We want this in-skin digital backbone. We need it. We need the ability to upgrade at the pace of technology. We need the ability to have high reusability with our systems. We need multimodal and hybrid sensors that don't just do one thing. And then obviously, not only do we want to prevent vendor lock, that's not necessarily the primary objective. We do enjoy that competition, but we want to be able to upgrade again at the pace of technology to thwart threats that are coming and hunting for us. So lots of opportunity for non-traditionals here. And again, we've seen it on the field out at our experimentation. You know, the A3i Gray Eagle is a great example of it, with over 60 technologies on and off that platform. Obviously, the FLRAA down select and the notion that MOSA is part of it, and then you're seeing it in our modular effects launcher. So that's I can't tell you how proud I am, and it's not me, but it's these majors, lieutenant colonels and colonels across our aviation six-pack who have done all the work to get these documents across the line up in that building. It's tough work, and they've done it with tremendous alacrity, and they've done it, and they've set the standard. And as I finish up here as the CFT director, I would tell you that's what I'm most proud of. Those requirement documents are awesome. They're not gold-plated, and they've gone through the most rigor of anything that anybody's ever done. And our good action officers and planners, you can be very confident as you go to bed tonight that we have built the next generation of guys that are thinking outside the box and getting a tremendous amount of work done. So thanks a lot. Thanks, Quade.
He may shoot me, but I just got to say that as he departs that position, I think his legacy would have to be never take a knife to a gunfight. He is always the data drive, and all the things that they've done while he's always prepared and has the data to support what he asserts. So God bless you, Wally, for all your hard work. This concludes the professional sessions for this year's Aviation Mission Solutions Summit. We look forward to seeing you in the Soldier Appreciation Dinner concert tonight with Jennifer Nettles. Exhibits are now open. We'll close at 15:30. As you leave, we're going to play that video again with this morning. My phone is burning up, people wanting copies of it, so I thought we'd show that. I think they ought to show that in every damn movie theater in the country. But anyway, thank you. God bless you all. Thanks for being here.